That evening, after dinner, I felt hot sweats running down my back. I decided to take a shower to make myself feel better. The bathroom was small, but the warm water on my skin felt soothing and relaxing. After taking a shower, I changed into a soft beige V-neck dress with a long zipper in the back, which I usually wear at home. I went into the bedroom to put it on. When I pulled up the zipper, I discovered that it was stuck in the middle, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't pull it up. I looked around, confused, and decided to call my husband. I asked for help, but when I entered the living room, the dim light was turned on. Only my father-in-law was sitting in the chair. Hearing my footsteps, he looked up slightly surprised. "Where's your husband, Dad? Is something wrong?" Hesitant. "John just went out, probably to buy some things." "Is there anything wrong?" His voice was calm. I bit my lip. In this situation, there was no other choice. I spoke awkwardly. My skirt zipper is stuck. Can you help me?" Hearing that, he put down his teacup on the table, stood up, and walked closer. "Let me see." When he stood right behind me, I could feel the distance between us being very close. His breath lightly fanned the back of my neck, making me a little nervous. He gently took the zip, frowning slightly. "It seems to be stuck in the fabric," he said, his hand starting to pull it. I heard a small click, and then everything happened too quickly. The zipper slid down hard, and the smooth silk skirt fell to my feet in an instant. I stood there frozen. In just a moment, I felt like time had stopped. The wind from the window blew in, making my skin cold. "Hello, everyone. I am Jean, 28 years old. I have been married to John for 3 years. Our married life seems perfect on the surface. A nice house, a stable job, and a stable financial situation. John is a loving family man, always devoted to me. And as for me, I am proud of my growing career where I can demonstrate my abilities and find joy in my daily work. We live with my father-in-law. Mr. John, a man in his late 60s, is strong and calm. He's an exemplary man that I always respect. He not only plays the role of a father in the family, but also a mediator. Whenever John and I disagreed, our conflict mostly revolved around having children. John wants a more complete family with children's laughter, but I am not ready. I want to focus on my career for a while and build my personal dreams before stopping to become a mother. Thus, this story became the source of long-lasting arguments. However, those arguments never diminished our love for each other. John always patiently persuaded, and I tried to explain. After each argument, my father-in-law gently stepped in and advised us. He always emphasized that family is about understanding each other. Everything can be solved slowly thanks to him. John and I always knew how to listen and give in to each other. I used to think that our life would go on smoothly like that, but one evening everything changed completely. That day was a busy day like any other. In the morning, I woke up earlier than usual to prepare breakfast for the whole family. John liked a simple breakfast, usually a slice of toast and a cup of black coffee. I also rewarded myself with a glass of warm milk to start the day. My father-in-law, Mr. John, still kept the habit of reading the newspaper while sipping a cup of tea every morning. The air in the house is always peaceful, warm, and filled with pleasant aromas from the kitchen. After breakfast, I quickly got ready to go to work. Although my office job was not too stressful, it required a high level of concentration. I put on a white shirt and elegant trousers and light high heels that made me more confident. On the way to the company, I stopped by a nearby coffee shop to buy another cup of latte. As a way to reward myself before a long day, the office that day was busier than usual. The consecutive meetings left me with almost no time to rest. I tried to handle each email, each report, and complete the tasks on time. However, I always kept an optimistic attitude because I knew that this job was not only a responsibility, but also my passion when the clock struck 5 p.m. I packed up my documents and left the company. When I got out on the street, the gentle afternoon sunlight spread out, giving me a feeling of comfort after a stressful day at work. I stopped by the supermarket near my house to buy some fresh food. Today I want to cook a more delicious dinner than usual because it's been a long time since the whole family had a chance to sit down and eat together leisurely. When I got home, I quickly went to the kitchen. John had just returned. He smiled and helped me set the table. Hot chicken soup, a plate of grilled salmon, and a portion of fragrant stir-fried vegetables were served on the table. My father-in-law walked out of the study smiling with satisfaction when he saw dinner. We gathered together chatting and laughing during the meal. Despite some minor conflicts about having children, family meals are always the most precious moments for me. I didn't expect that after that seemingly peaceful dinner, an unexpected event would change everything. After dinner, I felt a little stuffy, so I went to the bathroom. The cool water soothed the tension in my after the shower. I chose a cream-colored silk dress, my favorite dress, with a zipper in the back. When I stood in front of the mirror to zip it up, I discovered that the zipper was stuck halfway. I fumbled around, but still couldn't zip it up. I walked out to the living room, intending to ask John for help, but the living room was empty. I turned and called out, "John, where are you?" There was no answer. My father-in-law, who was sitting in a chair reading, looked up. John went out for a bit. "What's up?" I hesitated a bit, but finally I said, my dress zipper is stuck. I can't pull it up. Can you help me?" He put the book down and stood up. "Let me see." He stepped closer, his gaze as calm as ever. I turned away slightly, bowing my head to give him easier access to the zipper. His hand, firm and strong, touched the zipper. "It seemed to be stuck in this fabric," he said, trying to pull it up, but as he applied force, the zipper slid away with a small swish. The soft dress slid down, leaving me standing there frozen. We were both confused. I didn't know how to react, just standing there like a statue. He quickly turned away, his voice full of guilt. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." I hurriedly picked up the dress, my hands trembling as I pulled it to cover my body. "That it's okay, Dad. It's just that my dress is loose," I mumbled, not daring to look up. He took a few steps back, trying to keep his composure. "Fix it yourself. Let John come back and ask him for help." That he turned around and walked out quickly, leaving me standing alone in the room. The atmosphere was stifling and uncomfortable. I felt my heart pounding. Both embarrassed and confused, I couldn't concentrate on anything that evening. Every time I remembered Mr. John's apologetic gaze, I felt even heavier. I didn't know what he was thinking, and this made me even more worried. John came home late, as if he didn't know what had happened. He still smiled and talked happily, not noticing that I was restless. I tried to act normally, but I couldn't help but feel confused. Bored in the days after that incident, I noticed that Mr. John seemed to have changed. He no longer interacted with me as naturally as before, always trying to avoid my eyes whenever we accidentally met in the house. This made me feel uneasy, but I didn't know how to start talking to erase this awkwardness. However, there were times when I accidentally caught him staring at me, his eyes searching for something. At those times, I quickly turned away, trying to stay calm, but my heart was in turmoil. I couldn't tell what he was thinking, and this made me even more worried. I told myself that everything would pass, that time would heal these invisible cracks. But I was wrong. That morning I felt tired. My throat was sore, and my head was spinning. After taking my temperature, I knew I had a slight fever. John had left home early to go to work, and I decided to take a day off to rest. My father-in-law was still at home, but as usual, he spent his time in the study reading books and newspapers or doing his own things. I lay in bed for a long time, feeling so tired that I couldn't do anything but try to sleep, but because the room was too hot, I decided to go out to the living room to find some cool air. I was wearing simple pajamas, my hair loose, my face pale from fever. When I entered the living room, I saw Mr. Jan sitting on the chair, staring intently at his phone screen. I said hello softly, but he didn't reply. He just raised his head to look at me. His eyes were different now, no longer the usual calm eyes I was used to. "Are you not feeling well?" he asked, his voice deeper than usual. "Yes, I have a little fever, so I'm taking the day off," I replied, trying to keep my attitude normal. He didn't say anything more, just nodded, but his eyes were still fixed on me, as if searching for something in my appearance. That feeling made me feel inexplicably uneasy. I was about to step outside to avoid this tense atmosphere, but as I turned around, I heard him call, "Jean, come here. I have something to tell you." I stopped. My heart was clenched with a strange feeling. Mr. John stood up, his eyes full of determination, looking straight at me. The air in the room became heavy. I could feel my heart pounding and my palms sweating. "Jean, you are so beautiful," he said, his voice low and reverberating in the silence. I froze in place. feeling as if my legs had lost all strength. My whole body was cold. Each word he uttered was like a knife cutting into my heart. "Dad, what are you talking about?" I asked, trembling, my voice choked, but he didn't answer immediately. He stepped closer, each step making me feel as if the space around me was shrinking. His eyes stared straight at me, not moving away for a second. "Jean," he said, his voice soft but full of pressure, "can you let me see you again?" I stood there not believing what I had just heard. My eyes widened, looking at him as if searching for a sign that he was joking, but he wasn't. His expression was so serious that I was left speechless. I nearly yelled, trying to keep my cool. "How do you say such things? Don't you feel bad for John?" He paused, a look of confusion on his face, but his gaze never left me. "Jean, I don't know what happened to me," he said softly, his voice fading. "Since that day, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you." I stepped back, trying to keep my distance. "What you said is really wrong. You are destroying the relationship in this family. I am your daughter-in-law." I know, he interrupted, his voice louder, but quickly softened. "I know, but this feeling, I can't control it, Dad," I screamed, my voice shaking, my eyes stinging. "I don't want to hear it anymore. I don't understand how you could say such things. I can't believe it." Mr. John stood still, his eyes lowered to the floor as if trying to fight some force within himself. The air in the room was heavy and suffocating. After a long moment, he sighed, his shoulders slumped. His voice was soft, but trembling. "Jean, I don't know why things turned out like this. I'm sorry, but I can't lie to myself anymore." I stood there confused and panic rising in waves, but my legs felt like they were pinned down, unable to move. He stepped closer, each step slow but filled with pressure, his eyes fixed on me, filled with conflict and an unnameable sadness. I stepped back, but the small table behind me blocked my way, leaving me with no way to retreat. "I know this is wrong," he continued, his voice quieter but still clear. "But this feeling really scares me. I don't want to hurt you, but I can't stop thinking about you." I felt my heart pounding so hard it felt like it was going to explode in my chest. "Dad, do you know what you're saying? We can't do this. This is wrong. It's going to ruin everything," I screamed, my voice cracking with emotion. He stopped in front of me, his eyes filled with pain. "I know, Jean, I know all of that, but I also know I can't go back. You feel it too, all right?" His question was like a knife that cut deep into my mind. Okay, my head, attempting to deny it, but my body refused to comply. "My mind." His eyes pleaded, not with pressure, but with a sense of powerlessness and vulnerability. I'm not sure what happened, but the entire room appeared to blur and all sounds vanished. When he took a step forward, the space between us was almost gone. I didn't back down. All of our invisible barriers vanished in an instant when it was all over. My hands shook uncontrollably as I sat in the chair. My heart was still pounding, but it was from fear rather than conflict. I couldn't believe what had just happened. Mr. Jin stood before me, his eyes wide with shock. "Jean," he began, but his voice became choked. "No," I said, my voice trembling. "Don't say anything. Do not say anything else." I stood up, feeling as if my legs had no strength left, and tried to walk quickly to the door. As my hand touched the doorknob, he spoke again, his voice thick with pain. "Gee, my apologies. I am sorry I did not turn around." I quietly exited the room, tears streaming down my cheeks, overwhelmed with guilt and confusion. I had no idea how to confront myself, John after what had occurred that night. I lay in bed, unable to sleep, as images, feelings, and words persisted in my mind. I was curious as to how things had gone so far. How do we confront reality from here? I had no answer, and perhaps neither did John. In the days that followed, I was in constant agony. The thought of telling John everything lingered in my mind, but every time I considered it, I felt helpless. I knew that if John found out, his relationship with my father would never be the same again. That sacred father-son bond would be shattered for good. I tried to keep everything inside, suppressing my pain and guilt, but it made me feel even more trapped. I realized that the only thing I could do now was leave. That was the only way to keep things from getting worse and save this family from collapse. I began making plans, but I tried to maintain a cheerful demeanor as if everything were fine. I didn't want John to notice anything was wrong until I had the courage to admit that all I wanted to do every day was make breakfast, clean the house, and smile as if everything was fine. But I'd made my decision. One evening, after dinner, as the family gathered in the living room, I waited my turn. "John," I said softly, trying to maintain my composure, "I have something to tell you." John looked up at me, his eyes wide and concerned. "What's wrong? Is there anything wrong?" I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. "I think we should move out. We can start a new life somewhere else. I feel like it will be good for both of us." John froze, his eyebrows furrowed. "Why do you suddenly want to do that? We've been doing just fine. Is something wrong?" I scowled when I saw him. "Nothing to worry about. I just wanted us to have some space, and I think it's time to leave." John placed his hand on my shoulder and spoke seriously. "Jean, I know something is wrong. You do not have to hide it from me. Tell me what's wrong before I respond." Mr. John descended the stairs, having overheard the entire conversation. "Jean is right," John said in a low but firm voice. "I believe you two should move out. You and Jean need space to establish your lives. I don't want to keep you two here forever." John looked at him with surprise. "But, Dad, I don't want to leave you. I believe we can still live happily together." Mr. Jin smiled and patted John's shoulder. "You don't have to worry about me. I'm fine. You and Jean should decide what's best for your futures." John remained silent for a long time, and then his eyes softened. Finally, he nodded. "If you say so, Dad, I agree, but I will come. I see you frequently." I didn't say anything, only bowed my head, feeling both sad and relieved. I could see why Mr. Jan helped me. It was his way of making amends and keeping this family together. When night fell, I stood in my room staring out the window, feeling empty. I knew leaving was the right decision, but the pain and guilt followed me wherever I went. My story taught me an important lesson. Every mistake begins with a small boundary being crossed. A moment of carelessness or weakness can have unintended consequences. None of us are perfect, but it is critical to recognize, confront, and correct mistakes. Always value your relationships, especially with your family. Family is more than just a place to stay. It is also a responsibility to uphold. One wrong move can destroy everything we've built over the years. So be cautious, set boundaries, and don't let your emotions get the best of you if you're in a similar situation. My advice is to take the action that causes the least amount of harm to everyone. Leaving is not always an option, but the best way to protect the people you care about is to learn to let go, which not only frees you, but also allows you to keep the good values you want to protect. I left the house with both sadness and profound lessons. Life is a long journey, and I promised myself that I would never wander off again. My story ends here. What happened taught me the most important lesson in my life: the value of family and responsibility. Thank you for listening, and I hope this story will help you avoid similar mistakes.